Welcome to ENside Politics, the weekly podcast on a few of the things you need to know about politics in San Antonio. I'm Greg Jefferson, Metro editor of the San Antonio Express News. I'm joined by our City Hall reporters, Megan Rodriguez, Molly Smith.
Hello.
And so you had a big night on Saturday. Small matter of a mayor's race and city council races. Let's start with the mayor's race. One of the things that really struck me about the result was you had three outsiders just killing it, absolutely killing it, with Gina Ortiz Jones capturing about 27% of the overall vote, followed by Rolando Pablos at, I think it was a little over 17% or nearly 17%, and then Beto Altamirano at a little over 12%. The city council members who were running for mayor weren't even close. Why do you think that was, Molly?
Yeah, I mean, I think voters essentially said on Saturday that they want to do something different and they want someone who is not a City Hall insider and has a new perspective. And I think, this race really showed that they didn't see in any of the council members someone who has either pushed back against Ron Nierenberg's agenda or who has a compelling vision for the city and was able to kind of craft a narrative of what San Antonio would look like and how it would be different after their 4 years in office.
Yeah. Now, I mean, could you say that of Gina Ortiz Jones or Beto Altamirano or Rolando Pablos? Did you get a really good idea where they were going to lead the city?
That's a fair question. I don't think we do. I just think their kind of message has been, we're going to bring change, unclear how.
And maybe that's exactly what voters want.
But we're going to do something different, and we're not just a continuation of the same. Yeah.
Now, it's important to note that turnout was, as kind of expected, abysmal. It was better than it was in the early voting period, because then it was just, barely 6%?
6%, yeah.
Yeah, now it cracked 9%, so that's good.
That was countywide, but in the mayor's race, for registered San Antonio voters who turned out to vote for mayor, it was 12%. So slightly better, but not great. They went
nuts. Yeah, so what the field was decided by 1 in 10 voters.
Yes.
Now, when you say voters want to change, what do you think they're looking at? I mean, obviously, Project Marvel and the possibility of public financing for a Spurs arena, it's gotten a lot of attention. Ready to work. The sales tax funded jobs program, it's gotten a lot of attention. I would assume that's what you're talking about, like the council's reaction to kind of, a not great voters not thinking really highly of either of those projects.
Yeah, I think, those are kind of the two of the big projects that have really dominated the city over the last few years. And if we start with Project Marvel, the city has been discussing this since early 2023. This is the downtown sports and entertainment district that would center around a new Spurs arena. And the city council for a really long time did not, at least publicly, push back against it, ask for more information, demand accountability. They kind of went along with whatever the mayor and city staff wanted.
Which was a lot of secrecy.
And when it finally was publicly discussed in November of 2024, very few council members, with maybe the exception of District 5 Councilwoman Terry Castillo and District 2 Councilman Jalen McKee Rodriguez, pushed back and said anything critical. It was a lot of rah, 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 this is amazing. And I think once they kind of got on the campaign trail and saw that voters were skeptical of this and skeptical of the use of public dollars, they kind of started changing their tune. But again, no one came out and said how they would substantially reevaluate the project or what they would do. And then if you take Ready to Work, this voters approved this program in 2020. It's been around since 2022. Has really never met its metrics. And again, no one on council has pushed back and said, what do we need to do? How can we revamp this? Should we think about how to use this money? Most of them say, yeah, let's keep the program, but it needs substantial changes. No one can say what those changes are, even though they have been there since this program was initiated, have access to the staff members who run it. And I think some voters think they should have an idea of what they would do differently.
I feel like the only changes with Ready to Work that have maybe been pitched are kind of on a level that not even everyone's fully on board with. Like, for example, Councilwoman Melissa Cabello-Haverda, who was running for mayor also, but she had mentioned wanting to bring down the age limit a bit to have folks who are maybe in high school be able to participate, which didn't have like a ton of support. And that's one of the only things that has like been, I feel like, a tangible change that has been recommended. And even that was not, I feel like, something that got a whole lot of people riled up for it.
Yes. So, I mean, it could be that the three major outsiders running for mayor, they didn't have good answers for this either. I mean, they were kind of all over the map on Project Marvel and public financing for a Spurs Arena. And you could say the same about their approach to Ready to Work. But they had the advantage of not having been around when any of this was happening in the background at City Hall. And with Ready to Work, they very much had their hands, some of them had their hands on it. They put it on the ballot back in 2020. So that makes sense. There's like this kind of unique partisan component to this race that I don't think we've seen, certainly not over the last 20 years. Let's kind of flesh that out a little bit.
So it's really a partisan fight between a Democrat and Republican. Gina Ortiz Jones, well-known Democrat. Most San Antonians know her from her 2 failed congressional runs. When she sought in 2018, she challenged Will Hurd, lost by just 1,000 votes. It was kind of a surprise at how well she did. Came back in 2020, lost by about 4 percentage points to Republican Tony Gonzalez. And then after that, she was Biden tapped her to serve as Undersecretary of the U.S. Air Force. She did that for about 2 years. But she's really kind of, I think, a darling of the Democratic scene. She got a lot of support in terms of money from Democratic groups across the nation. And then you have Rolando Pablos, who's been active in Texas's Republican Party for decades. In 2011, then Governor Rick Perry appointed him to serve on the Texas Public Utility Commission. And then most recently, in late 2016, Governor Greg Abbott appointed him to serve as Secretary of State. And he did that through 2018. And in that role, he oversees elections, and he's also the top advisor to the governor on border issues. And Rolando had support from folks who are kind of close to Abbott, have worked for Abbott. He also had the support of this PAC, the Texas Economic Fund. Its political strategist was the director of Abbott's 2022 reelection campaign. And that group explicitly kind of seeks to get conservatives in local seats. So I think we're going to see in the next few weeks kind of this really partisan fight.
Do you think the tone of the candidates, are they going to be more partisan, or is the partisan stuff going to be happening in attack mailers paid for by these very partisan PACs? You know, you've got Field of Change and the economic fund. Are they going to be going at it, but the tenor of between the candidates, it's different, or is it all going to be just kind of?
I think it remains to be seen. We're definitely going to see this fight in mailers, digital ads, TV ads. I think a lot of money is going to come into this race. But you know, I think we don't quite know what the candidates are going to do. I would say that I think Gina is going to make it partisan. Rolando, I think, is going to try to, I mean, he repeatedly says, I'm trying to take partisanship out of City Hall. I think for him, his pathway to victory, he is, he was about a little under 11,000 votes behind her. He does need to both get conservatives to keep coming back, but also he needs to get folks who are maybe more moderate, or even, some Democrats, to win citywide. So I could see him, depending on who he's speaking to, kind of tone it down and try to focus on these kind of nonpartisan issues of, his big one is reducing the poverty rate, which has remained the same since he moved to San Antonio years ago, and courting economic development.
Right. Poverty rate is about 17% right now.
Yes.
It just seems to hover right in that zone. Right. Now, okay, so we've got partisan PAC's about to unleash a ton of money. You've got two candidates who we are about to learn a lot more about them and their interactions. Any idea, have you heard yet where the defeated city council members, where they're going to go? I mean, they will probably start making endorsements soon. Any guesses as to who's going to pair up with whom?
Yeah, we haven't heard anyone come out yet. I think we will start to see that this week. Mm-hmm. I could see my, hunch would be that a lot of them are going to come out behind Gina because they are Democrats. And I think there is this feeling that among Democrats that we need to keep San Antonio as a blue city. But I think it's going to be kind of a question where the fire union and where the police union kind of put their support. Those groups, which have really deep pockets, have a lot of influence, sat out this time. They did not make an endorsement. I think we're expecting them to make an endorsement. So that could kind of shift the game if they go for someone like Rolando. I think it's going to be really interesting to see what Ron Nirenberg does. He didn't make an endorsement in the May 3rd election. Has kind of left it an open question at whether he will.
Also, I mean, presumably he thinks he's got a future in Democratic politics.
Yes.
That maybe tells you if he does make an endorsement, where's he going to go?
To Gina.
It might be there. Before we move on, what most surprised you in the results for mayor?
I was surprised at how well Councilwoman Adriana Rocha Garcia did. She got nearly 10% and did better than Manny Pelaez, who injected a lot of money in his campaign, represents the North Side, which has far better voter turnout than her Southwest Side district, did better than Melissa Cabello-Havrda, John Courage, and former Councilman Clayton Perry. But I was surprised at kind of how well she did for running a campaign on a very shoestring budget and having to overcome the fact that she, represents a very low turnout district and may not be as well known across the city or as some districts. So that did surprise me. Yeah. I wasn't expecting her. I was expecting Manny Pelaez to perform better than she did, just because of kind of the part of the city he represents.
Megan, any surprises?
I mean, for one, I want to point something out with Courage as a reminder to folks. Like, he had been in the race and then jumped out of the race and then back in. And when he jumped out, he had supported Adriana Rocha Garcia. So I was always curious about like how those votes were going to shape up.
Robust support.
Yeah.
He was totally in her corner until he wasn't.
Yeah. And so I was surprised. I think kind of in line with that she ended up still outperforming him. And maybe it's just like as a result of people being confused of like, oh, he's still on the ballot. Like,
well, I mean, to me, actually, that was the surprise for me. That was the surprising thing, how poorly he did. I mean, he did just marginally better than Clayton Perry.
Yeah, he has like 5.6%.
Yeah, and here, I mean, he was in two UTSA public opinion polls. He did quite well. I mean, wasn't he number 2?
Was he number 2 in the most recent one? Yes.
Yeah, and yet he just he did not excite voters, and not even. I know I've said it a million times, but he's got the best name for a politician. He still had it, and nobody cared. Like he just did not perform the way I thought he was going to.
I think also looking at the other kind of third city hall outside Beto Altamirano, I think a lot of people did see him in a runoff. He's been campaigning for months and months and months and has put tons of money in this campaign.
I mean, it's been over a year.
Yes. And I mean, in the days before early voting and during early voting, folks were getting a mailer from him every single day. And so I think he was the question of, he doesn't really have the name ID, kind of unknown, but was the money he was pouring in going to make a difference? And I think it really did help him get to kind of 12% and be in third place. Right. But I think some folks did see him potentially in a runoff against Gina.
Yeah. So I would not be surprised if both Gina Ortiz Jones and Rolando Pablos have been on the phone with Beto Altamirano trying to get his endorsement. His politics were always kind of fuzzy. You just never, he was just hard to place on any kind of political spectrum. So it's not like with some council members, it's kind of a slam dunk. They're going to go with Gina Ortiz Jones, the Democratic nominee in this nonpartisan race. With Beto Altamirano, I think it's a more difficult question.
I could see him though going for Gina. I mean, I think his politics it is a question. He really positioned himself kind of as a centrist, as a moderate, didn't really take overly political stances, was trying to court people from all across the spectrum. He will kind of emphasize the fact that he got his start in Democratic politics. He did say at his watch party, this is not the end for me. I'm only 35. I have years ahead of me to do this. And I think he's someone who's probably positioning himself for some sort of Democratic seat, and a lot of the seats in San Antonio, Bexar County are Democratic. So I could see him going after Gina solely because he'll make the calculation that this benefits him best politically in the long term.
Yeah. So that was, go ahead.
Oh, no, sorry. We're not going to switch over yet, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the watch parties from election night, because I know you bought
by the way.
Well, Gina did not have a watch party. She was the only leading candidate to have a private party. Everyone else kind of traditionally, and this is tradition in San Antonio, has a public party. They put the address out there, volunteers, supporters come. The press comes, and the press really comes, to just ask them questions and kind of get kind of their message out to San Antonians. Gina did not do that and kind of made the decision to, I guess, speak to press after the fact. Her campaign really hasn't put out a statement. And I think a lot of folks have seen kind of this video of her leaving her campaign office surrounded by her volunteers. And there's kind of a gaggle of reporters trying to get a comment from her because she was the leading candidate.
Right.
And she essentially says, I'm going to Fiesta. I'm going to celebrate with my team.
I mean, it's like, I'm all for norms busting. If there's a good reason to break a norm, by all means, break it. I'm just at a loss as to why break this norm. Like, there couldn't be anything more familiar to voters, to the media, of course, than election night parties. It is a chance for a candidate to not only thank their core group of operatives, but thank volunteers, thank people who voted for them, thank people who voted for them and got family and friends to vote for them. And particularly in a general election, this is a chance for a politician who has made the runoff to talk to the city.
Yes.
And she, for whatever reason, decided not to do that. I mean, it just seemed like, it's like she was breaking norm to say, I'm an insular candidate. I'm not comfortable, addressing voters. Apparently, I'm sure I'm overstating it, but it invites that kind of criticism.
And it was kind of drastically different from Rolando's. You kind of saw this clash of personalities. This event that was very open. He was very accessible. Was willing to talk at various points throughout the night. Because you will see some candidates, they don't want to say anything until they're ready to call it. And I think, his message he gave was, I'm going to bring San Antonio together and I want to unite people, and kind of hit home his, I want us to kind of find a way together to tackle this persistent poverty question and do it by having economic development. So that was kind of his message to everyone moving forward. And we don't really have a message from her of, okay, how are you going to bring these people in? Because yes, you're the leading candidate, but you still only won just over a quarter of the city's vote.
Right. And by the way, we heard from her campaign that this is the norm, right? Nobody's doing
apparently
election
that's
night
what her
parties
campaign
anymore.
says. No one does these parties.
Nobody, and yet
I guess except in San Antonio.
Yeah, apparently, the backwater of San Antonio. So let's shift to council races where we had in District 1. I don't think it was really a surprise when you're a first-term incumbent and you've got 9 challengers. You might wind up in a runoff. So let's start from there.
Yes. So District 1 Councilwoman Suk Kaur, yes, like you said, first term councilwoman, and she had 9 challengers. And so there was this question of, is she going to be pushed into a runoff? All the other council incumbents, 5 others, were easily won. Like, I think Phyllis Viagran was the lowest of the winning incumbents with 57% of the vote. And I mean, that's way more than the 50% that you need. And yeah, Councilwoman Kaur just barely got pushed into a runoff. She's off by 1 percentage point that she needed to have won outright. But it's interesting. It seems like there was just a lot of these other candidates just kind of took votes, and then you have Patty Gibbons, who is honestly the most conservative person running in a very, what I think people think of as a more left-leaning district. And she's the one who drove her to a runoff. She actually, Patty Gibbons, is from the Greater Harmony Hills neighborhood, which was in District 9 up until a few years ago when the city redistricted. And District 9, as everyone knows, is the most conservative district in San Antonio. And so you kind of have somebody who was on the kind of edge of, I guess, now.
She wasn't happy about it.
She was not happy about that switch. No. She was definitely pushing back against that as it was coming through. She had run in District 9 also, actually, when she was in that district, and now ran for District 1. But yeah, she is basically kind of similar to a lot of the opponents that Suk was facing, was saying that Councilwoman Kaur is just not reachable. She doesn't listen to the concerns of the community. And Patty Gibbons is promising to want to kind of have more of an ear for the neighborhoods and their concerns, and kind of just be more reachable, accessible, and successful in the role. But I mean, when you've got somebody who got 49% of the vote versus about 17%, it's pretty obvious that it's going to end up.
That has the work cut out.
Yes, yeah.
What kind of campaign are you expecting from her? She strikes me as pretty aggressive. She's a pretty outspoken person.
Yes, and I was actually just talking with our colleague Brooke Park, who was actually covering the District 1 parties on election night, and who was actually saying that Patty said that she kind of wants to hunker down on some of her more conservative viewpoints and in this next cycle of the campaign. So I do think that she is somebody who really campaigns hard. Another one of our colleagues was telling us, who lives in District 1, that they had folks from her campaign out there constantly coming to their door. And so I think people are going to see a lot of Patty and her team in this upcoming election.
That's going to be interesting. How did there was a real hell-raising candidate in District 1, Julissa Medrano Guerra. How did she do? And by hell-raising, I mean she was very aggressive. She had what I think was a pretty funny mailer. It was Councilwoman Suk Kaur's face on the side of a milk box.
Yes.
Where is she? We never see her. The last time we saw her was election day, last runoff. How did she do?
Yeah, she got 4th place behind Patty and behind Susan Strawn, a former prosecutor. And I was always...
It was a little better than 6%.
Yes. So, and she, yes, had been the loudest. And she really was self-funding, though. Like, that was what kind of made it hard to know, like, how much support or she had, because it was like, is she by choice doing this, or is it just because there's not a whole lot of folks in her corner? And I think that the latter turned out to be true.
Right. Now, she, as part of her campaign, and it was pretty clear this was motivated by campaign politics. She filed an ethics complaint against Councilwoman Kaur. What's the status of that?
Yes, so still moving through the process. They've all, during the ethics complaint process, you're able to basically file a rebuttal if you're the person being accused, and you kind of go back and forth with statements for a couple of weeks. And we should be hearing pretty soon if the board, like what they're going to be doing, whether it be a hearing or something to that effect, because only a portion of that ethics complaint was actually taken seriously by an outside attorney who kind of reviews these and decides whether or not to send it on to the board. The other several claims were kind of tossed aside as not.
Refresh our memories. Just
Yes.
what was the?
So the
And I know it
ones
was a
that were
bazillion-page complaint. So
it was actually a pretty short complaint because they made sure not to use too much jargon and things like that. But it was a lot of a lot of points. But the thing that's moving on is this issue of did Councilwoman Kaur misuse city resources? One of the specific examples named that I feel like will be kind of a focal point in the Ethics Review Board's review will be this incident at a neighborhood association meeting in which Councilwoman Kaur's chief of staff was speaking on behalf of the city about how city projects were going, and then later in the meeting handing out campaign materials, signs for Councilwoman Kaur. And staffers are allowed to work on campaigns. This is very normal for staffers to also be staffing the political end of things, but you're not supposed to have any kind of real overlap. Like if you're on city time, you're on city time. If you're on campaign time, you're on campaign time. Right. Now, I know that like a lot of people kind of wonder like, well, what is city time and what is not? Because especially during campaign season, these times like this kind of start to feel a little bit fuzzier. And so I feel like the board is really going to have to step in and say, okay, here's our cutoff of what is and isn't appropriate. Some of the other complaints that were kind of tossed aside were kind of talking about Councilwoman Kaur's voting record, bringing some of that into question of if she's being bought off by developers. And that's
there was an argument where basically if you take any contribution from anybody that even generally touches on anything you vote on, you've violated the city's ethics code.
Yes.
I think that's it would have been hard to justify that.
Yes.
All right, so let's move on to other races. What were you watching? What were the races that really got your interest?
Yes. Well, this one was actually won outright in District 4. Edward Mungia, who has worked for the District 4 office for years, won outright. He's the only person in an open seat to do that. It's hard to win outright in an open seat. There tend to be more crowded races, and people don't really know who you are a lot of the time, and so it's a lot of fighting and usually going to a runoff. And so he won outright. That race is done. Now there's 3 other open
How many was he running against?
1 in 5, right?
Yes. And so it wasn't the most crowded. So, but it was impressive. 57% of the vote on the night of is impressive, especially for an open seat race. But you have then District 6, 8, and 9, which are going to runoffs. District 6 was really tight the whole night between the top 4 contenders. And you ended up with Rick Galvan, who works for Terry Castillo's office, and Kellyanne Gonzalez, who is going into the runoff together. They were only fewer than 30 votes away from each other. And then the candidates who were trailing behind them also very close. District 9, I feel like, will be really interesting because you've got Misty Spears and Angie Taylor Aramburu, who are going to be facing off. They were in the lead by a lot, but compared to the other contenders, and they actually came only a couple of percentage points away from each other at the end of the night. But what I think we might end up seeing is Misty, who tends to be the more conservative candidate, and I think that she's going to kind of scoop up some of the votes for the people who didn't make it in this race. There were a couple of pretty well-known like right-leaning candidates like Daniel Meza, who has experience working in like John Cornyn's office, and he was kind of running on a more conservative platform as well. I would say it's safe to say that his votes will kind of move on over to Misty. And then it's a question of, well, who is going to be running over to Angie in this next round? Yeah. So,
well, I mean, she had the support of John Courage.
Yes, she did, he is well liked in District 9, despite the fact that he is a Democrat.
I cannot wait to see how he did in the mayor's race in District 9, because I mean, again, as we pointed out earlier, 5.5% not great, and a lot of people expected him to do better. I wonder if that's a concern for her having his. I mean, not that it hurts. Obviously, in that district, he's highly regarded, but he's also a little bit damaged at this point.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Again, they were really close in this race, and so I think it'll be pretty tough for them both to be kind of trying to win out potentially. But like I said, I just immediately think of the fact that Misty has a little bit more of an upper hand in the fact that there were candidates who were a little bit more like her, who are out of the race now and will have voters going to her. But
now, she had been working in Grant Moody's office. He's the only Republican county commissioner on Commissioner's Court. She had his endorsement. Is she still working in his office, or is she no longer?
She was, yes. And we'll need to talk to her about kind of what her next steps will be and everything if she ends up making it on. But yes, she'd been working in the office through this this campaign cycle. And yeah, he is also the treasurer on her campaign. So he's been working closely. He was one of the first folks at her watch party. He actually was the one after she arrived, like the early votes took a while to come out. So she got there around 7:45 and is kind of saying her thank yous. And Grant Moody jumped up to say like, oh, like here are the results of the early votes and you're making it to a runoff.
So he called it. So hold on, that was a watch party? Did she have a watch party?
Misty?
Yeah. Did she?
Yes.
That's weird.
And
I've heard that those are so passé.
And then he made his way to Rolando's watch party and made an appearance there as well.
Did he? Okay.
That's fun. Running around a lot that night. But yeah, District 8 is the one that I've not touched on yet. So Evilise Meza-Gonzalez was the most obvious front runner in that one. And the two who were closest behind, they were neck and neck the whole night. It was Saqib Sheikh and we also had Paula McGee, who ended up winning out by, they were only a difference of 77 votes, and Paula McGee ended up making it. And so that's who we're going to see in the runoff next round. And so it'll be interesting. We've got a lot of people who are going to be coming back out again, hopefully.
And that one will be interesting because you have you don't have as much of the partisan dynamics as you have in District 9.
Correct.
Where I think Republicans really see it as a pickup opportunity to take the seat back from a Democrat. John Courage is a moderate Democrat. District 8, Evilise Meza-Gonzalez ran as in the Democratic primary for Bexar County Judge back in 2022. And then Paula McGee is what the Republican Party calls her one of their vetted candidates. So they're not endorsing candidates, but they do support her. Her platform is a lot more along the lines on, I think, similar to kind of Rolando's. We need to stop this partisan stuff. We need to stop wasting time on these social issues, and we need to get back to basics. So I think, you could see this Republicans seeing this as another pickup opportunity. I mean, she was 20 percentage points behind Evilise Meza-Gonzalez, but I think that'll be interesting because it's, a bit of a partisan dynamic there, and maybe both candidates will play that up. I could see Evilise Meza-Gonzalez kind of highlighting the fact that Paula McGee is more conservative and wanting to kind of keep this district in more kind of maybe moderate or Democratic hands.
All right. We're going to be talking about these races a lot in the coming weeks, at least until, I don't know, June 7th, which is the date of the runoff. So thank you very much. Rest up because, like I said, we're going to be talking and reporting a lot. So, and thank you for joining us. We will see you next week. And I'm going to say this maybe just one more time, if you've not signed up for the ENside Politics newsletter, please do so. Drop to the show notes, click on the little button thing, and sign up. And thank you very much. We'll see you next week.